until you fix your cortisol, you're never going to lose weight. Even if you go on a drug like GLP-1s, Ozempic, Tirzepatide, you name it, it's going to be hard to lose the weight. And the goal for today is to explain to you all the reasons why cortisol is making weight loss impossible. By the end of this video, you should understand perfectly well how all your pain points or struggle with weight loss connect with cortisol, your symptoms. Why are you feeling fatigued, wired, tired? You have more hot flashes. Your cravings are taking control over you. You're going to connect all this to cortisol, and I'm going to show you how to change it. And this is the reason why cortisol is the step number 2 in my weight loss program, where my clients lose 30 pounds in 6 months. And cortisol is the second thing we work on to make them lose the weight. I am Karen Oliver, and I'm your host. I'm a certified health, nutrition, and menopause coach. And if you like this type of content, please click subscribe. So, weight loss, it's about calories in, calories out. We've talked about this, and we have said yes and no, that different sources of calories can make diet different, and they have different effects on your body and your metabolism. True. At the end, yes, what matters is calories in, calories out. So how is cortisol important? If you just cut calories, you're good. But it's not so easy, right? Because what happens with your cravings? How do you control cravings that take over you? You do well during the day, and the night comes and you start binging and you cannot stop it. You start with one snack and the whole day of dieting goes through the window. This is because of cortisol. So let's hit the first point where cortisol makes dieting almost impossible. Hunger regulation and cravings. So the first thing high cortisol does to your hunger hormones is it has an effect on leptin. And you develop something that is called leptin resistance. And what this makes is that your system gets muted and don't receive these signals from leptin. And then you never feel full. Like you can keep eating forever. So this is bigger than you. It has nothing to do with willpower. If you're hungry, you're hungry. It's not you because I like eating this. No, you are trucking hungry. How do you create a calorie deficit if you're hungry? It requires a lot of willpower. So ghrelin, that is the other hunger or appetite hormone. So leptin is the one that lets your brain know that you're full, that you need to stop eating. And ghrelin is the one that lets you know that you're hungry, that it's time to start eating. Well, ghrelin goes up when cortisol is high. So you have stronger cravings. Here comes those cravings that you cannot control. It is not in your head. People want to make you feel that you're weak. And what happening is on a hormonal level. So cortisol is making you crave food, especially sweets and carbs, and sometimes even salty snacks. But it is a hormonal response. So how are you going to create a calorie deficit if your hormones are making you eat and crave food? With high cortisol, you also get insulin resistance. Cortisol is deploying glucose on your bloodstream all the time because it's a hormone for energy. So you end up having insulin resistance, and when you have high insulin, you not only have glucose crashes after eating, but you also have more fat storage. High insulin equals fat storage. Okay, those crashes after eating, the reactive hypoglycemia, make you eat because your body gets into hypoglycemia, your blood glucose is low, and what do? You eat so you can recover your glucose level and your energy and feel good again. High cortisol suppresses GLP-1. Yes, GLP-1 is natural. So your natural Ozempic hormone gets suppressed with high cortisol. So how are you going to create a calorie deficit? That's on the hunger side. Another effect that high cortisol has is on your hormones and your sex hormones. High cortisol creates estrogen dominance, which worsens fat storage, especially around the belly and the hips, on top of all the moodiness of being estrogen dominant. It suppresses progesterone, which is what makes you estrogen dominant. And progesterone, if you don't have progesterone, you're going to have harder time sleeping. You're going to be more moody. You're going to be more explosive and reactive into situations that happen. More anxiety. If you have high anxiety, it's harder to diet. A person that is anxious, what do? You eat. It's a coping mechanism. So now you start to understand why cortisol is so important on your weight loss journey. And I say this all the time. Regulating your cortisol is not going to magically make you lose the weight. And having this regulated cortisol didn't make you gain the weight by itself. But all the effects it has on your life and on your personality, let's call it like that, make you gain or lose or help you lose weight. But you still have to put the hard work in. You still have to diet. You still have to exercise. But if you're not having cravings, dieting is easy. See, my clients rate our program, the difficulty of the diet, they rate it 4 out of 10, where 10 is difficult, 1 is nothing. It's super easy. Why is it easy? Because the first thing we fix is the cortisol dysregulation. So we make it easy for them. It is a diet. It is restrictive. We are creating a calorie deficit big enough for them to lose 30 pounds in 6 months. That is fantastic. But how do they do this and make it feel easy? By fixing their cortisol curve. Chronic high cortisol also has an effect on testosterone. We all want to have good testosterone because it's the stamina. With low testosterone, you're also going to lose muscle mass, which is going to make your insulin resistance worse. You're going to have low strength, low stamina, low libido. Your metabolism slows down. Where do you find the mood to go to the gym and work out when you have low testosterone? It's hard. Then, high cortisol affects the step number 1 of my program. If you watch my whole blueprint of the 6 steps for 30-pound loss in 6 months, go find it if you haven't. The step number 1 is sleep. The first thing we fix in my program is sleep. Cortisol is the second one, and we almost fix it at the same time. High cortisol dysregulates sleep. You cannot sleep if you have high cortisol. A dysregulated cortisol curve is going to make you wake up at 3 a.m. and not be able to go back to sleep. Then at 5 a.m., you're going to be groggy and drowsy and not able to function. If you don't sleep, you eat more the next day. Studies show that if you restrict sleep, people eat 300 to 500 average calories on top of their normal intake on the following day. How do you create a calorie deficit? If cortisol is high and it's not letting you sleep, and not sleeping is creating this extra calorie intake. And on top of that, not sleeping moves fat storage to your belly. Here comes the perimenopause belly fat that you don't understand where it's coming from. Here's where it's coming from. It's coming from dysregulated hormones that affect how you store fat and your capacity to stick to a healthy lifestyle. High cortisol affects your melatonin metabolism. So it affects your circadian rhythm. Again, you cannot sleep well, not only because of the high cortisol that gives you energy at the wrong times of the day, but it damages the metabolism of melatonin, so you don't have the hormone that helps you sleep. So it's all like a double whammy where you go in a down spiral and everything starts adding, and it's like a puzzle that all interconnects and it makes things exponential. When you don't sleep, you reduce your growth hormone release, because we release growth hormone, or the most big chunk of growth hormone that we get is when we sleep. So when high cortisol, dysregulated cortisol disrupts your sleep, and you also don't have melatonin because high cortisol disrupts the melatonin metabolism, then you don't get your normal dose of growth hormone. And growth hormone is so important for recovery, for muscle building. So people start feeling burnout. But what was the root cause? High cortisol. High cortisol also puts you in a roller coaster of energy. This is when you feel like, oh, I have energy. And then you have this 3 p.m. crash where you're like, I can barely move, I need coffee. And then like at 7 p.m. when you should be winding down to go to sleep, then you get like your second shot of energy and you're the most efficient at energy at 10 p.m. it's a roller coaster of energy. And this roller coaster of energy brings a roller coaster of cravings that go with this. Every time you crash, you get cravings. And you have to eat those carbs or those sugars because you have no energy. You have brain fog, you cannot concentrate. That roller coaster is basically keeping you in survival mode. You are act and react, act and react. You're reacting to those crashes all day long. And again, we use food as a coping mechanism. And dopamine gets depleted when this happens. So we find pleasure with food. Low dopamine, we look for something that gives us pleasure for that dopamine. Now you're understanding why we rely on food all day long to feel well. What do you do when you feel bad? You eat. You have that glass of wine, you have that dessert, you have those chips. But this all has a root cause, and it's your hormones. And all the hormones gets dysregulated when you have a cortisol curve that is not in place. It's either chronically high or is low in the morning when it should be high and is high at night when it should be low, or even worse, you have made it to a place of complete fatigue and your cortisol curves is flat. If you have low stamina, when your cortisol is low, you don't want to do anything. You feel sometimes, I had a client that told me that she was afraid to drive because she felt like she couldn't control her tiredness and she would fall asleep any moment. Like she just needed to sleep like a switch. That happens when your cortisol is dysregulated, and when it's low, you feel like that. When it's high, you can actually feel kind of good because it keeps you energetic and you keep going. And yes, it's an energy hormone, but it's not good to feel like that at nighttime. It's not good to have the cravings. It's not good to be overweight. If your cortisol is low in the mornings, let's say, and then high at night, which is the most common, like the cortisol curve flipped, where do you find the stamina and the energy and the motivation to work out, to meal prep, to go to the grocery store and get food instead of just Uber Eats some crappy meal? See that it's not your fault. This is what I want to make it an important point. Because we, girls especially, we feel that it's our fault, that we don't have enough willpower. We feel guilty, like I couldn't make my diet, I couldn't make it today. I was going to eat well. I started eating well during the day, and then I got these cravings, and then I was super fatigued and I couldn't make it to the gym, and we feel like we're lazy, that we don't have willpower. It's not you. It's your hormones. And again, I'm going to repeat this a million times. Fixing your hormones does not mean you're going to lose the weight immediately. You have to put the hard work in. But you're going to be in such a good place, physically, emotionally, energy, everything, that putting the work in doesn't even feel like work. High cortisol also drives inflammation. Chronic inflammation blocks your fat burning pathways. It is hard to burn fat if you have chronic inflammation. And this is an effect of having high cortisol, which leads to mitochondrial dysfunction. The mitochondria is the core of your metabolism. If you have mitochondrial dysfunction, nothing works well. You have no energy. You have poor fat oxidation. How are you going to lose the weight? If the machine is not even using fat, if you don't have fat oxidation, how are you going to lose the weight? And if on top of that, you're adding all the symptoms, the cravings, the mood swings, the energy crashes, the not being able to sleep, the eating more because you're not sleeping, the lack of energy to exercise, it's impossible. It also affects your thyroid. High cortisol blocks the conversion T4 to T3, which is the inactive form to the active forms. So you get a sluggish thyroid. We all know that thyroid is the thing to lose weight, right? The first thing a doctor tests if you think you're not able to lose weight is your thyroid. Yeah, so high cortisol makes poor thyroid function. And you may have normal levels of TSH, but you may not be converting T4 to T3. So you're not getting any of the benefits of a good functioning thyroid. And this lowers your basal metabolic rate. So your body burns less calories in general while resting. If you burn less calories and you don't have the energy to work out and you have all cravings and you eat all day, do you think you're going to lose weight? No, you're going to gain weight because you're not going to be in a calorie deficit. You're going to be in a calorie surplus. And we can keep adding things. Gut dysbiosis. High cortisol disrupts your gut, your microbiome. So it creates more bloating, constipation, SIBO, candida. All those things, again, affect your craving, makes you bloated. Who want to be bloated? It's the most uncomfortable thing. It ends up in leaky gut, which worsens inflammation. And we already talked about you are chronically inflamed when you have high cortisol. And if you're chronically inflamed, you're blocking your fat burning pathways. You see how everything connects. It's not just the one thing. It's a whole system that collapses. It's like a domino effect, but it kind of goes and comes back. It's terrible. High cortisol slows liver detox. The metabolism of the things we metabolize happen in the liver. If you have sluggish liver pathways, your metabolism is not working well. And when I talk about metabolism, this matter, I mean how you metabolize estrogen. So we already talked about how high cortisol lowers progesterone and that makes you estrogen dominant. If your liver is not metabolizing estrogen well, you're even more estrogen dominant. You see how they stack. It makes it exponential. So it's not only the fact that the progesterone drop and now you're estrogen dominant, and that creates horrible mood swings, your boobs hurt, like bad periods, PMS, etc. So those are kind of like the most important reasons why cortisol is the first thing we tackle in my weight loss program and why people feel like this program is so easy. And it's not about this program. Like any diet, you choose the diet. If you have high cortisol, it's going to be hard to stick to it. If you fix your cortisol, it's going to be easy. And that's what we want because that's how you make it last forever. That's how you make it a lifestyle. That's how you lose the weight and not gain it back. Even if you would be on GLP-1s, like I said at the beginning, think of all these symptoms we just mentioned. So the only thing that the GLP-1 is going to do for you is going to be reduce appetite. Okay, you may not be hungry, but you're still going to have emotional cravings. You're still going to have sugar cravings. You may not be able to eat that much. Yeah, so you may lose some weight, but you're still going to struggle with all the same. You're still not going to be able to sleep. You're still going to be estrogen dominant. See? You're still going to have chronic inflammation. So the moment you stop the use of the drug, you're going to gain the weight back because you didn't change anything in your machine. You just closed the appetite factor, right? But the moment you open that up, everything else is still there. You need to work on this while you're on this drug if you're using the drug. Otherwise, you either use the drug forever or you gain the weight back. Then, other than weight loss reasons, if you're a woman 40 and over, you have many perimenopausal symptoms. And many of them are affected or driven by cortisol, hot flashes, so vasomotor symptoms. They're either triggered or worsened, night sweats. You may not have hot flashes during the day, but if you're sweating at night, this is probably very related to high cortisol. On top of other hormonal things, right? I'm not saying this is the only one. There can be other things driving these symptoms, but this one for sure has an important effect on this. Brain and mood. Are you having brain fog? High cortisol makes brain fog worse. Drives brain fog because drives memory lapses. Anxiety and panic attacks. This is so common. People hit 40, 43, and they start having like a lot of anxiety and sometimes panic attacks, which is horrible. This is driven by cortisol. It is also driven by the change on your hormones because you're aging and you're starting to hit perimenopause. Your progesterone goes down naturally because of this. But if you, on top of that, you have high cortisol, your progesterone drops even more. And progesterone is the hormone that calms you down. That's why you start having panic attacks. So you need to fix your cortisol and your progesterone. But until you fix your cortisol, you're going to keep having the symptoms. Mood swings and irritability. Cortisol makes you explosive. If you feel like you were not like this before, but now someone tells you something and you just bark at them, that's related to cortisol. And of course, the lack of progesterone, because progesterone calms you down. Like, there are many things. I'm not saying this is the only one. But when you put all this together, if you have high cortisol, perimenopause feels harder. I'm sure you have friends that are going through perimenopause or your same age or whatever, and they don't have any of these symptoms that you're having. And you ask yourself, why? Well, some people feel perimenopause harder, more symptoms, because they have other stuff going on, like high cortisol, and it makes all the symptoms worse. PMS, you get PMS on steroids with high cortisol. Lower resilience to stress. You cannot handle stress the way you used to handle it. This is because of high cortisol. And it has to do with the other hormones. I'm going to be repeating myself all the time, but it's a lot of hormones can do this, but cortisol is one of the biggest drivers. Sexual health. Low libido. All my clients, they don't come to me for low libido. My clients come to me to lose weight. But once they're with me, they start like tackling other things. So they start tackling everything they're going through with perimenopause. And one of the biggest, most common things is low libido. Karen, I love my husband, but I have zero interest. High cortisol lowers your libido. It suppresses sex hormones like progesterone and testosterone. I explained before how it lowers testosterone. If you have low testosterone, you have low libido. Things are starting to click, right? You're starting to connect everything. Then energy and fatigue. We talk about this. Chronic fatigue. Women in perimenopause feel like they're fatigued all the time. They tell you, like, I don't understand what's happening, but I'm so tired all the time. Well, so you're not sleeping. You're going to be tired. And it's usually that feeling that being wired but tired. So you're exhausted, but if you would lay down to take a nap, you can't. Like, your brain is wired, but you feel exhausted. And this comes with loss of motivation. So you start a diet and you immediately lose motivation. And you do the diet for a couple of days and then you're like, oh, I cannot do this. Cortisol dysregulation. Blood sugar and metabolic health. I already mentioned it on the weight loss piece. And here comes a very important one. Loss of bone mineral mass. Cortisol steals the calcium from your bones. So if you have chronic high cortisol, you're almost condemned, doomed to end up at least with osteopenia when you age. This means high risk of fracture. And we know one of the, even if you don't want to lose weight, you need to work on your cortisol because of these health things like insulin resistance, diabetes, bone mineral mass, inflammation. Then aging and immunity. It accelerates your skin aging because of the collagen metabolism. It affects the collagen in your skin. So you age faster when you have chronic high cortisol. Lower immune function, so you get sick more often. So as you can see, it's not only about losing the weight, it has huge effects on your health and lifestyle. But this is for weight loss. The whole point is you cannot lose weight. It's not like you can't. I mean, you can, but it's so difficult when you're having all the symptoms that until you regulate your cortisol, it's going to feel impossible to lose weight. So this is all hitting you too close to home. You feel like I just described your issues, but it's all negative. I have not given you any solutions. Well, make sure you subscribe because on the next video, I'm going to give you all the steps to fix your cortisol curve, to put it back in place and feel better. And that was it for today. See you on the next one.